Hello, welcome to the audio presentation for the notes on the physical features of Southwest Asia. These are the same physical features that you have placed on your map already. This is just a little bit more information about that to kind of give you a better understanding about what they are and how important they are. Because this is the first time we've done one of these audio presentations, I'm going to let you know that anytime that we're about to change slides, I will say next or next slide. That's so that if you have not finished with the notes for the particular slide we're on, you can hit pause on the video and you will have a time to be able to go back and finish your notes as you need. So let's get into it. Next slide. Middle East. The Middle East is also known as the crossroads of the world because of its location in the center of three continents: Asia, Africa, and Europe. Deserts are the most common physical feature here and make up 66% of the area. Water is scarce in this region. That means there's not a lot of it, with countries often competing over access to the rivers and seas. Next slide. And you can see a map of what is considered Southwest Asia, the Middle East, and just the areas around it. And you can see from this that you are literally talking about a place that's dead in the middle of where three continents are. Next slide. The Euphrates River. The Euphrates and Tigris rivers both start in the mountains of Turkey and run parallel, that means side by side, to each other in some places. The Euphrates River runs through Syria before joining with the Tigris River in southern Iraq. It then flows along the border between Kuwait and Iran and empties into the Persian Gulf. Next slide. You can see here both of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. You can see the course that they map out, starting up in Turkey and moving through Syria, Iraq, and down into the Persian Gulf. Next slide. The Euphrates is the birthplace of the ancient civilizations of Sumer, Babylon, and Assyria. It is a source of water for Iraq, Syria, and Turkey today. Next slide. This is a photograph of the Euphrates River, a portion of it. Next slide. Tigris River. The Tigris flows through Turkey to Iraq. Along with the Euphrates, the Tigris was a central part of ancient Middle Eastern civilizations. Today, the rivers still provide water for both drinking and farming. The countries that share these rivers have had problems over how the water should be shared. Next slide. This is a picture of the Tigris. And you can see the farmland in the foreground or closer to the camera part of the picture. The Jordan River. The Jordan River starts in the mountains of Israel, Lebanon, and Syria and flows south until it reaches the Dead Sea. It is only 20 feet wide at some parts and only 17 feet at its deepest point. This river is a main source of water for Israel, Lebanon, Jordan, parts of Syria, and many of those living in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The Jordan River is also important because it is the political boundary between Israel, the West Bank, and Jordan. When you say political boundary, you're usually talking about a border. Like if you looked at a map and you said, well, where's the border between Georgia and Tennessee? There's a line. That's a political boundary. It's not really there. Next slide. You can see here, this is a map showing the path of the Jordan River flowing south out of Lebanon and Syria and Israel. All these little rivers coming together, going into the Sea of Galilee, and then out from the Sea of Galilee down here between the countries of Jordan on the east and Israel on the west. The West Bank is technically controlled by Israel. Next slide. This is a picture of the Jordan River, and you can see, as the notes mentioned, the river is very small at some points, but still very important. Next slide. Another shot of the Jordan River. Next slide. The Suez Canal. The Suez Canal connects the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea. It is a 120-mile man-made waterway that is used to transport goods to and from Asia, Africa, and Europe. The Suez Canal is an important shortcut because it allows trade between all three continents. At the northern end of the Red Sea, ships can enter the canal and can get to the Mediterranean Sea without having to sail all around the continent of Africa. Next slide. This is a map showing the place where the Suez Canal connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. And you can see how it kind of moves. And basically what they've done is they picked the narrowest spot that they could coming from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, and then also identified some lakes and other bodies of water and things like that that they could make use of to make it a little easier. Next slide. And this is an aerial shot of a portion of the Suez Canal. Next slide. To give you an idea of the width, that's a United States aircraft carrier there moving through the Suez Canal. And so you can see there's still room to spare on either side. And it's deep enough to support what is one of the world's largest warships. So, it's a significant construction feat. Next slide. Persian Gulf. The Persian Gulf is a shallow body of water between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. This area holds one of the largest and most important oil fields in the world. It is one of the main ways oil is shipped from the rich fields of Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and other countries that line its shores. All of the countries that produce oil in that region depend on the Persian Gulf as a shipping route. Next slide. You can see here the Persian Gulf as a map. You can see the countries that are surrounding it. The bigger ones that we've talked about, or we will talk about, like Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. But you're also going to get some of the smaller ones with Qatar, UAE, and Oman. Next slide. And this is a high-end satellite shot of the Persian Gulf. Next slide. And this is a beach shot of a portion of the Persian Gulf. Next slide. One of the many oil rigs that's actually like drilling into the seabed underneath where all the water is and everything like that to pull the oil out from underneath the ground in the ocean floor. And the oil is then transported either through pipes or sometimes actually through ships off these facilities to the shore where it's refined into usable product. Next slide. The Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway that connects the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea. It is a critically important shipping channel because much of the world's oil supply passes through this strait. Any ships coming out of or into the Persian Gulf must navigate through this very narrow waterway. Next slide. You can see here the box highlights where the Strait of Hormuz is. Notice the spelling on strait. It is not the same as, the word straight, like if you're thinking of a straight line or something like that. It doesn't have the G or the H. So when you have this spelling, it's talking about the type of waterway, the narrow waterway. Next slide. Aerial shot, high-end satellite shot of the Strait of Hormuz with the little part of Oman right there at the point, and then Iran over there at the top of the picture. And an island that looks like a dolphin. Neat. Next slide. And this is just a prettier shot of a narrow portion of the strait. The Arabian Sea. The Arabian Sea is the most northwestern part of the Indian Ocean. It is bordered by India to the east, Pakistan and Iran to the north, and the Arabian Peninsula to the west. For centuries, it has formed a key shipping route between Europe and the western ports of India. Next slide. You can see here the Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean, the bigger body of water. Arabian Sea is part of that. And then you have, it's kind of framed like it said just a second ago, India on the east, Pakistan and Iran up north, and then the Arabian Peninsula with Saudi Arabia, Oman, Yemen, UAE, all those countries right there around it. Africa to the very, very west, but you're kind of getting out of what you would call the Arabian Sea at that point. Next slide. And this is just a small little peninsula headed out into the Arabian Sea. This is very, very small. It's not something that you would see on the map. At least not very well. Oh, sorry, next slide. Red Sea. The Red Sea is an arm of the Indian Ocean that lies between Northeast Africa and Asia. It is linked to the Mediterranean Sea by the Suez Canal. Because of the Red Sea's location between Europe and East Asia, heavy shipping traffic takes place here. During the Middle Ages, it was a key part of the spice trade. The spice trade, seasonings and things like that would come up out of Southern Asia and places like that, going to Europe. That was a huge deal. And this is what they're talking about when they say the spice trade. Next slide. You can see another overhead map here showing the location of all the different bodies of water. Next slide. And we have much closer, beach shot. Just giving you a really good idea of what it looks like to be on that ground level. Next slide. And again, this is a satellite image of the Red Sea. Africa to the west and the Arabian Peninsula to the east. Next slide. And then one more photograph here. Just kind of another beach type shot, coastal shot, Red Sea.